Thank you for staying up later. My name is Jeff Cesario. Bob Costas actually has quit. Yeah, he decided that 1:30 a.m. wasn't a big enough challenge. He's shooting for something about 2:15. My guest tonight has probably the most recognizable saxophone sound in the world. They haven't yet invented the elevator that can suffocate this guy. When his music comes over a sound system, even CPAs cock their ear and go, hey, that's that Sanborn guy. David Sanborn here tonight on Later. You paid a lot of dues as a sideman on like everything from the Rolling Stones to the Eagles. You did Steely Dan, James
My friend
Taylor.
Danny Kortzman calls that Leroy to the stars.
Yeah.
That's what that syndrome.
It's got to be tough walking into somebody else's living room, in a sense, and playing their music as a sideman. When you walk in, what's the range? So, are some guys loose? Some sessions loose and some sessions much tighter?
Well, most of the sessions I did were outgrowths of, you know, playing on the road with the people, you know, and that I subsequently went into the studio with to record with. I mean, I was on the road with Paul Butterfield, and you know, we made records in that band, and
that was your first gig.
That was my first gig, 1967. I joined Butterfield. I was with him for 4 years, and then I was with Stevie Wonder for a couple of years after that, and then I was on the road with David Bowie, and then I was on the road with James Taylor, Linda Ronstadt, and so...
You never got off the road?
No, I pretty much lived on the road and I still consider myself to be a road musician.
Now, with David Bowie, you did some tunes that are just like pop icons right now. With Bowie, you did Young Americans, which is probably one of his biggest hits ever. And that's so interesting to me, because on that tune, it seems like you are playing constantly. It's like this 5-minute solo that they kind of mixed in.
It's
no,
relentless.
it's great.
Stop that, man!
But it's great, and you kind of patterned it after guitar.
Well, I actually I played the role or whatever of the guitar player. There was no lead guitar on that record. It's interesting because my first influences were really guitar players. My early playing experience was with blues bands, Albert King and a great guitar player and singer named Little Milton Campbell, who's still around, who's still active and making great records.
As a sideman, what's the worst experience you've ever had?
Oh,
you don't have to name names. You know, you just want to tell how bad the gig was. That's fine. But because there's got to be some, and you've played so many of those kinds of sessions.
Well, I think generally, you know, I've been very lucky that I haven't done too many of those, because again, mostly what I get called to do is to play a solo, so I have a certain amount of latitude.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
Did they give you that latitude willingly, or do they ever pen you in? Do they ever say, "We want the squeal. Give us a squeal for 4 bars, and here's cab fare. Thank you very much." Do they ever lay that on you?
Yeah, I think it's kind of always, you know, often it's a version of, well, you know, on that record that you played over there, you know, can you kind of do that? But wait a minute, this is a different tune. Yeah, but you know what I'm talking about. Well,
do you try to avoid those?
Unfortunately, I do.
Yeah. Do you try to avoid those now?
Yeah.
Boy, that's almost...
Which is why I stopped doing it.
Yeah, that's like a moral decision at some point, because you know, it could be big bread, could be great exposure, but you go, I can't do the squeal because musically it doesn't fit. Mm-hmm. And you know they're going to go out and get Junior down the road who's doing Junior Dave, and he's going to come in and do the squeal.
Well,
but
more power
artistically,
to him.
yeah, at some point you got to cut it loose. You did a show for NBC in the late 80s called Sunday Night Music.
Yeah.
What
Well,
was
it started out Sunday night, and then when it kind of started moving around, we just called it night music. To give
They shifted you.
Yeah, to give the programmers a little more latitude, because they didn't want to show a show called Sunday Night on Saturday.
You really worked hard to make that eclectic. It was a great show.
Yeah, we did work hard to make that eclectic, because I think it is important to kind of represent the kind of wide range of music, not only that there is out there, but the wide range of music that musicians can encompass, you know, in their own music. And we tried to do that by pairing musicians and combining musicians in maybe, you know, what would seem to be very unusual combinations. Like we had Leonard Cohen and Sonny Rollins.
I remember
and
that
Not
night.
Was on the same show.
Was Not
performing
Was,
together. Yeah.
pop funk group.
Yeah.
Leonard Cohen, eclectic poet, folk, avant-garde, and Sonny Rollins, one of the, like the classic jazz saxophonists of all time. And it worked.
Sunshine, ooh, in the nighttime, ooh, by high ordeal, ooh, by common trial, ooh, in your merry, merry month of May, ooh, by very slow decay, and who shall I say, is called
In terms of being a sideman, you are, to America, probably the classic sideman on the Letterman show.
Mm-hmm.
You get on there and, man, it's this guest is sitting in, and it looks like it's happening, and it's hip, and it's just so much fun, and you just took a cab there at 5:29 and walked in.
Just about true.
Really? Is
Yeah.
it? How do you play that gig?
It's just about that way. I pretty much, you know, show up at about 4:30 or 4:45, and if we have a chance to run a couple of things over with the band, we do. Otherwise, we just wing it.
Really?
Yeah, absolutely. Paul will call out, you know, some tune, and I'll either know it or not, but play it anyway. Either way.
Please, ladies and gentlemen, come on back if you can.
When I hear you guys coming in and out of commercial when I'm at home,
Yeah.
I go, man, I want to hear that whole tune. I just want to hear
Yeah.
you wail, because it sounds so great. You know,
But
and
leave them wanting more, Jeff. That's the principle, yeah.
You started playing for medical reasons. I mean, it was basically doctor's orders, in a sense, when you were a kid. I mean...
Yeah, in a way, in a sense. I was sick when I was a kid. I had polio when I was a kid. And as a result of that, my lungs were very weak. And I think at one point in my life, I was about 10 or 11 years old, the doctors suggested that I play a wind instrument for therapy. And I mean, that was right about the time that I was starting to become aware of, like, a lot music, and rock and roll was, you know, on the scene. And I heard Chuck Berry for the first time, and Little Richard, and all, I mean, this music that was like, you know, it was like real life.
It got you in your gut.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, because before that it had been, you know, Mr. Sandman and Come On to My House. You know, I mean, that's a big
against
jump to
those
Good
tunes.
Golly Miss Molly. You know, nothing against Rosemary Clooney, for
Far
God's
be it
sake.
from us.
Far be it from me.
And so you started playing,
Yeah.
and you
well,
started the hard way. I mean, you came up through the
well,
clubs.
in a sense, I did. Yeah.
Well, you know, I think people have a sense that, especially instrumental musicians, come up and they're well-schooled and they go through a whole school thing and they go to college and they get a degree in popular saxophone and then they go and start
Well, I
recording a
did,
record. You got that. But really, it's much like comedy in the sense that it's you have to do it in front of people
absolutely, yeah.
to learn it.
Yeah, well, what inspired me to play the saxophone was hearing the Ray Charles Band, and these two guys, David Newman and Hank Crawford, play the instrument, and it was, you know, to me to have that kind of emotional, that kind of communicative power, you know, without singing, you know, they were kind of the instrumental counterpart to what Ray was doing vocally, and that was the most alive music that, to me, you know, at that time and even today, you know, was Ray Charles. You know, Ray Charles's music, and
He was a great
synthesizer of a lot of different elements.
Yeah, he was one of the
Gospel,
first
R&B,
guys
and
to do
jazz.
that. Yeah, gospel,
know,
R&B, jazz.
And that was what it was always about for me. You know, I mean, that was kind of the example that I tried to follow. I tried to kind of, at least that's where I consider myself to be coming from.
Now, the R&B clubs in St. Louis,
Mm-hmm.
that's some rough joints, man. St. Louis, East St. Louis, those are not
Yeah.
easy places to be baptized into the world of music.
Well, I guess not. Now that you
You were
mention
going
it,
to
I
try to
guess-
cover, you were going to try to
Yeah,
do something tactful, and then you went, no, they're not.
I mean, at the time, it didn't seem to be that out to me to do something like that, you know? Because, I mean, it was an outgrowth of, you know, what I was already doing and the people that I was playing with, and like, you know, it was like, oh, there's this gig at the Blue Note in East St. Louis. Oh, okay, let's go over there, you know?
How were you treated? That was a largely black scene.
Mm-hmm.
You're this white kid, short, small, little white kid coming in with a saxophone.
Yeah.
Young,
Yeah.
15, 16.
16 years old, yeah.
Did they take you under their wing? Was there some resentment?
You know, it's funny. I don't remember much negative about those experiences. You know, I mean, to me, I was so focused on the music, and these were my friends.
Right.
You know what I mean?
You
And
didn't
and
think
so
about it.
I was hanging out with my friends, playing music and meeting other musicians, and I mean, I'm sure that there was a novelty factor about this, you know, young white kid in this club. I mean, there had to be, but I mean, it was either, you know, the folly of youth that I didn't really pick up on how kind of odd that was.
When you went on the road and during those early road years, did you experience any racism from your end, or did you see it with black musicians?
Well, I mean, I became aware of it early on.
How did it hit you?
I don't remember the first instance of when it hit me. I think it was, you know, when I became aware that my friends who were black would hesitate before coming to meet me at a certain place, or saying, well, hey, listen, why don't we go over here? Well, you know, we really can't go. I said, what do you mean you can't go over there? You know, because it didn't really occur to me that was a problem. Or why don't we go to a movie? Well, we can't go to that movie theater. What do you mean you can't go there? I go there all the time. Well, we can't go there. You know, and this is like the Fox Theater in St. Louis, this big, you know.
Yeah, this is St.
not
Louis
that
in the-
long ago.
Right, this is St. Louis in the 50s and 60s, yeah.
I think Chuck Berry, you know, has a story about, you know, his father taking him to the Fox Theater to see A Tale of Two Cities, because he thought it would, you know, be an artistic
Wow.
experience for him.
Ironic
And then,
title.
Yeah, exactly. I never thought of that, but it's true. And him putting his money up on the counter and the woman saying, you can't come in here. You know? And then, 25 years later, he's back headlining at the Fox Theater.
Well, first of all, you were at Woodstock
Yeah.
with Paul Butterfield, right?
Right.
It's an amazing span to be able to say you played Woodstock, and then let alone to be able to say you played Woodstock as a saxophonist.
Yeah, it's an alto saxophone.
Such a long, long way from home. Baby, you didn't mistreat nobody. Didn't do nobody wrong.
When we got booked at the Woodstock Festival, it didn't seem to, it didn't have any portend of what was, we had no idea.
You had no idea
We had no
it was
idea
going to be what it
expect.
was.
No, we had played the night before in Chicago, and we flew into New York, and they met us at the airport and said, listen, you can't drive up to the festival site because the thruway is blocked off. I said, what do you mean, the New York State thruway is blocked off?
And all you're thinking about is a hamburger at some roadside stand.
Or something like that.
What do you mean the road's closed? Man.
Yeah, White Castle? What do you mean?
So they airlift you into
Yeah,
the
they
city?
airlifted
Oh,
us into the festival, and I remember as we flew over the site, seeing like more people than I'd ever seen in one place before.
What did you think?
I didn't think, it was overwhelming.
How did you get on the Stones tour? 1972 Rolling Stones tour.
Yeah.
Infamous.
Yeah, oh man. Well, there was a movie of that tour, which
Speaking of hanging
the title
out,
of which you cannot say on television.
it shall remain nameless.
We'll call it Caligula 72. And believe me, it lived up to that.
When did they decide they wanted a horn player or a couple of horn players?
Well, actually, no. What happened is I was playing with Stevie Wonder, and we were opening for the Rolling Stones. So during the course of the show, we played our set, and then the Stones played their set, and then we came on as a horn section and augmented their horn section, which was Jim Price and Bobby Keys. So that was my experience playing with them, was as kind of, on that during
How
that
about
tour.
playing offstage with the Rolling Stones?
I don't know how much of that you can really talk about.
That must have, well,
television,
just generally speaking, that was just...
Well, I think that was the
amazing
height
period.
of the kind of bacchanal period. I just remember, every night, seeing somebody like Truman Capote or Lee Radziwill or Terry Southern, I remember, was a
Famous
fixture on that
playwright,
tour.
writer, yeah.
Wow.
And
Boy,
he was just...
Boy, was he loose. He was well-oiled the whole time. Yeah.
And you were fairly
Was
well...
an impressionable youth, yeah.
You were fairly well oiled yourself occasionally.
I got pretty oily.
Then at some point through the 70s, you decided maybe I should stop getting oiled.
Yeah.
Maybe it's time to move from Bacchanal.
Yeah, it was actually the early 80s. It was the late 70s when it dawned on me. It took me a few years to actually get my foot to the brake, But, it was like, okay, we'll stop now.
Like a New York cab ride. You just,
Exactly.
No.
That's right, yeah.
You had a great way to phrase it. I believe you said you had a decision to make. You were either going to get high or you were going to be a musician.
Absolutely, yeah. And there was a real fear on my part that I wasn't going to be able to play anymore, because I had associated getting high so much with playing that in my mind, the creativity and the drugs had become, kind of inseparable. And so I was pretty raw for about the first year, and it was difficult, because there'd always be somebody that said, I liked you a lot better when you were getting high. Well, so I'd say, well, I liked you a lot better when I was getting high, too. What do you say to something like that? But then you just kind of, you build up some confidence, and you realize that you're actually better, without the drugs. And I look back on that whole period as, I don't, I'm not unhappy that I did it. I mean, I look on it as something that I did that I don't do anymore. You know, to me, it's very pragmatic. I stopped because they stopped working. They got in the way.
That's a classic debate in music that rages to this day. Right now, it happens to be in rap music, but through the years, through the decades, whatever the popular music was, seemed to have the raging debate over whether drugs enhance your playing or diminish your playing.
Well, I mean, to me, it's like whatever, you know, if it works, go ahead and do it if you want to take the chance, you know, but it's a risk, you know, and I mean, to me, it's a personal decision, you know, and I don't, you know, I don't preach about it. If somebody asked me, I would recommend that they don't do it, just on a human level, because it is so risky, and there's a high order of probability that it's going to turn on you.
Thanks for staying up. A special thanks to my guest, David Sanborn.
Thanks, Jeff.
You start a 2-month tour of Europe and the States, which includes a July 28th date in Central Park, right here in New York. Bob will be back next week, so go to bed, rest easy. See you later.